Rancho Mirage. Our next guest is an author and recent resident of Desert Hot Springs. In fact, he has written what could be considered the definitive biography on Desert Hot Springs, historical biography of Desert Hot Springs, if such a thing existed. Taking us all the way back to 103 years ago, starting with Jack Riley in 1908 and going all the way forward to, well, Alex Bias's wife being charged in 2 separate bank robberies. The book is called The Vortex Made Me Do It. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it on Amazon. I think those 2 things are the same, but you can get it. Our guest, Bill Effinger, the book, The Vortex Made Me Do It. I want to ask you specifically about a story that has come to light in the Desert Star Weekly online at desertstarweekly.com, that a local real estate developer received a $10 million giveaway thanks to a special relationship with the current city manager, Rick Daniels. The development in question is the still incomplete Skyborn development that was run by Jim Kozak of Strategic Land Partners. As I understand it, Bill, a developer is required to come in, take out an insurance policy to make sure all the public improvements mandated by the city are completed. That policy is considered a bond, and each month the developer must pay into the policy like a guarantee. Unfortunately, that bonding measure was never assessed.
Yeah, well, it's a bond. I mean, you refer to it as an insurance policy, but it's actually a bond, and bonds are to bond for the improvements, to guarantee that the completion that the improvements are going to be completed.
And these are public improvements for the greater good of the community, the neighborhood. That's why the city mandates them.
That's correct. The original developer of that property that got all the improvements to go forward with Skyborn posted the bond. So when they transferred the property, they wanted to get out from under the bond. And the city, I just sat back and my mouth was open. I mean, you never let anybody out from under a bond without knowing that the improvements are going to get finished.
Why would you let a developer out of a bond? It doesn't seem to be in the community's best interest at all.
Well, it didn't seem like it to me, and it still doesn't. And so what the city now has, instead of a bond, they have a lien. Well,
what good's that going to do?
I didn't fall off the turnip truck here.
Bill, that's the second time I've heard that in reference to Desert Hot Springs.
Yeah.
It's not an
the Vortex and the turnip truck, I don't...
Well, and then what does that say about before the Skyborn development, prior to that, the Palmwood development, with a man who went by the name of Michael Crosby in Desert Hot Springs?
I want to tell you, I did my best to try to convince all those people being the city council, and there are people that will attest to this. I spent hours and hours and wrote article after article, and I met with Crosby, is who he called himself at the time,
right,
and told him to his face he was a scam artist. And I said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself taking advantage of these people. I said, they seem bent on listening to your garbage, and I ran through a whole litany of things where he was smoking grass, which he might have been, and nobody wanted to listen. And Yvonne Parks really was upset with me because I did everything I possibly could to try to stop them doing what they were doing.
Well, Michael Crosby wasn't even his real name. I believe it was Krasniak, and I believe he's been sentenced to 11 years for grifting, but none of those charges had anything to do with Desert Hot Springs, who appears to have lost a good chunk of change in this development as well.
Yes, they did, and nobody wanted to listen, and unfortunately, that was all going on right at the transition when Anne Marie Gallant went out the door.
And Rick was coming in.
And Rick was coming in, and Rick was saddled with all kinds of these things, trying to play catch-up.
But in your opinion, Bill, did you see Rick trying to change the climate in City Hall in Desert Hot Springs, or did you see him sort of going with the flow?
Oh, no, my assessment of Rick was, and I had worked with him alongside of him when he was executive director of the Economic Development Partnership. I was on that committee, and I thought Rick was a strong manager, and he came in and did an awful lot of things to try to turn the city around, and I thought he was making a lot of progress. And he has made a lot of progress, but along the way he's made a lot of poor decisions as well.
Now, how do you go from making the mistake of Palmwood Development and allowing a man using a pseudonym to enter into your community and then leave with, buckets of money, and then you turn around and you give a city contract to a convicted felon who's operating security equipment without a state license, also using an assumed name? The same mistakes seem to happen all over again, Bill, and that's why I'm going to say maybe you should have called the book There's Something in the Water. You got a couple minutes to hang around?
Sure.
I'd appreciate it. Our guest, Bill Effinger, he is the former resident of Desert Hot Springs and the author of The Vortex Made Me Do It.
K-News is your news. The Desert's News Talk Superstation, K-News Radio.
On K-News Radio, I'm Lee Rayburn, and our guest is the author of The Vortex Made Me Do It, a definitive history of Desert Hot Springs. You can find the book online at Amazon or Nook or Kindle or Barnes & Noble or wherever they make electronic books and hard copy books. Bill Effinger, our guest, author of The Vortex Made Me Do It. And Bill, you and I both know there are plenty of good folks in Desert Hot Springs. And from your perspective, having lived in Desert Hot Springs and decided to leave Desert Hot Springs with your wife working inside for the city of Desert Hot Springs, what can be done to turn the city around for the sake of those who still care about that city?
People that really care about the city have to take it under their wing. They've got to participate. You can't be sitting on the sidelines watching the people that don't know what they're doing run the city. I mean, in my view, looking at it as I did while I was up there, there is we're in a democratic society, but there just seem to be some communities that don't have the capability of governing themselves. The city of Bell is a very good example, and that's one where they just turned their head and let everything go. And unfortunately, it just seems to me that the people that vote up there in Desert Hot Springs are either not informed or don't care, but there aren't enough people that vote. That's certainly the case, and I would implore everybody that really cares about that city to get involved and go to the city council meeting. I never missed a city council meeting while I was there. I rarely missed a planning commission meeting.
Wow.
I was interested. I'm interested in every city I get into. I'm very involved in the city I'm involved in that I live in right now.
Well, Bill, what I thought was very interesting about your book is, you talk about the definitive history of Desert Hot Springs, but you'd think, well, maybe that's a couple hundred pages, but, buddy, you just kept writing. I mean,
yes.
What, a 400-some-page doc?
Every time I would go to shut it down and close it up, there'd be some other oddball thing happening. And so I'm writing this thing, and instead of it was almost like a travel log.
Now, your book goes back 103 years with a start with Jack Riley in 1908, purportedly the first white man to set foot in the area, and then Hilda Gray in 1910, the area's first known white settler, followed by Cabot Yerxa in 1913 and Cabot's Pueblo Museum, which now stands today. Have you been following the removal of the artifacts from Cabot's Pueblo Museum?
Every morning I open up the Desert Sun. Along with 4 other newspapers that I read. And, of course, so I follow everything that's going on up there, and informed as I can possibly be on that city, I have an interest there. That city has tremendous potential. It's just very sad that here we have a city that sits, 1,600 feet above the valley floor. It's got views that are absolutely incredible. And the city is has never been run right from the get-go.
Well, and it's interesting because your argument seems to mirror my argument, Bill, that the solution is the people of Desert Hot Springs, which also happens to be at this point the problem of Desert Hot Springs.
Exactly. And it's a portion of the people. Obviously, it's not all of the people.
Right. We're out of time, but with your permission, I'd like to have you back sometime soon because there's still a lot to talk about, and you certainly have an awful lot of knowledge. The book, The Vortex Made Me Do It, the author, our guest, Bill Effinger. I look forward to the opportunity once again. Bill, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. The Vortex Made Me Do It should be a good read. Sounds like a lame excuse. We'll recap our top stories when we continue.